All right, so what do I want to click on? Oh, by the way, the least or greatest integer function, the answer I had on that other one was wrong. It should be 4, not 2. I did a little research on it. Let's talk about that. I think I can explain it very easily. All right, let me. If you have this, that is the greatest integer function. And how you figure that out is over here on the left. Let's say x is 4.1. Okay? Well, the greatest integer function, you go to the left. In other words, 4.1, there's 4. So you go to the left. So if you had the greatest integer function of 4.1, it would be 4. Just always go to the left on greatest integer function. On least integer function, you go to the right. That's one. Okay, so if we had 2.1 negative, then the greatest integer function of, excuse me, there's different mathematical notation for this. This is for sure greatest integer function of a negative number. You go to the left. Got it? It's confusing a little bit. That's the greatest integer function. You always go to the left. Now let's talk about, Now let's talk about the least integer function, which is what you, whoops, no bottom arrow. In other words, this is a cap. So here you go to the right. In other words, if I draw the number line, there's 5.1. Well, the next integer over is 6. And if I had a negative 2.1, the least integer function of negative 2.1, is negative 2. In other words, so the only thing you need to memorize is that when you have the hats, you go to the right. When you have the feet, you go left. As long as you can draw the number line and put the number that they're talking about in there. So tell me what this is. What is that? Go to the left. It's the first integer you run into when you go to the left. Correct. How about this one? Go to the left. Negative 4. Know what that? Here's the number line. Here's the number line. There's negative 3. There's negative 4. Negative 3.2 is right there. Go to the left. Always go to the left. So you get negative 4. Okay? And then the greatest integer function is the opposite. You go to the right. So if I had this, what's that? Go to the right. Go to the right. Go to the right. Yes. How about this one? Negative 2.1. Go to the right. Always picture your number line. Picture your number line. Here's the number line. There's negative 2. Where's negative 2.1? Right there. Go to the right until you hit an integer. Start where you're at, right there. Go to the right until you hit an integer. Yeah. And that's how it works. When you have the caps, you go to the right. When you have the feet, you go to the left. So whatever you have to do to memorize that, memorize that. Okay? So, which means the answer I gave you to that last problem was wrong. Was not 2. Do we have a way of backing up to that or not? Or can, no? Oh, yeah, I think the answer was 4. Because, yeah, you had least integer function of 5.1, which was 6. And then you had greatest integer or least integer function of minus 2.1, which was minus 2. Add those two together, you get 4. Okay. All right. Okay. So here we're graphing, and what is that thing called that's surrounding the x? Is it least or greatest integer function? So you have to figure out. Now, the least is the caps. This is the feet. That's the greatest integer function. Okay. So what that means is, what if x were 1.1? What would the greatest integer function of 1.1 be? You have to know whether you go to the left or the right. Yes. So what's the greatest integer function of 1.1? Okay, now multiply that by 6. Okay. So whenever x is between 1 and 1.99, f of x is going to be 6. Well, that ain't right. F of x is 1. Let's look at C. Okay, here we're close. It looks like, yeah, whenever x is 1, or when x gets to be exactly 1, then the greatest integer function between 1 and 1.99 would be 1. In other words, if I write here the greatest integer function of 1.9, what is that? What number? What's the greatest integer? Just think about it for a moment. You're talking about a number 1.9. What's the greatest integer of that number? It's 1. It's 1. When you're talking about positive numbers and you're talking about greatest integer function, just cross off the decimal and that's your answer. Okay? So, yeah, and then if I multiply it by 6, then it would be 6. So this is beginning to look like a pretty good solution. Now, the difference here is that they have a closed dot, which means when it's exactly 1, it's exactly 6. So I would say C is definitely the right answer, but let me look at the other charts. Okay, it's not that. Notice that B is not a function. Does not pass, well, it does not pass the vertical line test. So if it's not a function, it's not going to be the answer. Okay, so it looks like C is correct. Okay, again, what is this? Is it greatest or least? Okay, so I've got charts. Let me get all charts. I'm trying to graph it here. Okay. So I can draw. Which ones can we cross off immediately? What is it definitely not? Yeah, A is not a function. In order for something to be a function, it has to pass the vertical line test. And if I draw a vertical line right through that, I get multiple points. So definitely not that. Okay, so let's plug in some numbers and let's go A, B, C, D. So let's try B. Let's try a positive number. Put in a positive decimal for X. Small number. Okay. So what is, first of all, what's that equal to? Yep. So we now have 4 times 2, which is 8, plus 6. So f of 2.5 is 14, right? Well, let's check B. 2.5 is right there. Is f of 2.5 14 in that graph? Yeah. Now, so that's not right either. We can tell it's way down here. It's negative. Okay. So now let's check C. First of all, let's pick a value for X. How about 0? Pick 0. 0.1. No, we don't want to do 0.1. It matters when you go into negative numbers. It's a little different. Well, let's teach you that. Let's pick negative 0.5. What is the greatest integer? Negative 0.5. Which way do you go on the number scale? It's either left or right. What did we do on 5.2? What's the greatest integer of 5.2? What is that? Yes. No, hold on just a second. The thing to learn here is that you're going to the left. Right? Here's the number scale. There's 0, there's 5, there's 5.2. So to get the answer, we have to go left to the nearest integer. And it applies whether you're dealing with positive or negative numbers. So there's -1. Here's our point, -0.5. Go to the left and tell me what the greatest integer function of -0.5 is. -1, exactly. In other words, if you always remember, you just have to go to the left. It looks funny because one would almost think that 0 should be the answer. But just remember that when you're dealing with the bottoms, the feet, you go to the left. When you're dealing with the caps, you go to the right. And you'll always get it right. It's very confusing. It is. But you can make it really, really easy if you just remember that when you're dealing with feet, you go left. When you're dealing with caps, you go right. So, given that this is true, that it's -1, so what is f of -0.5? Well, it would be 4 times -1 plus 6, so that would be negative or +2, correct? Well, that actually looks correct, right? In other words, there's my -1/2, and we are at +2, so it satisfies that. Let's try a different number. Let's try f of -1.5, because we do have a number that is -1.5 on this graph. So what would f of -1.5 be? First of all, what is this? Always do that part first. Start, here's what I want you to do. Start with that on the number line. And then go left until you find an integer. Always. Go left until you find an integer. Okay, here's my number line. There's -1, there's -2, there's -1.5. So start with -1.5 and go left until you find an integer. Yeah, it's -2. Which means, okay, so that becomes -8 plus 6. So that whole thing is -2. So if we look at this graph, C, and we go to -1.5 right there, it says -4. That ain't right. So D, well, I would say D is correct without wasting any more time if I was on a timed test. But you never can tell. I might have made a arithmetic error. So let's check D. So first of all, does D give us the correct answer when x is between 0 and 1? In other words, this range right there. So what is 0.5? What's the greatest integer? No, go left. Always left. I tell you how you can remember it. See that? That's the first letter of left. So when you see a bottom, when you see a foot, it means you go left. So what's the first integer you run into when you go left? Here's the number line. There's 0, there's 1, -1. Here's 0.5. What's the first number you run into when you go left? First integer. Okay. So you need to draw that every time. Okay? And then just, well, that's fine. But in your head, you need to be thinking about it as a number line. Put your number on there and go left. And the first integer you run into, that's the answer. So if that is 0, then what is f of that? 6, right? Okay, so that would be, or f of 0.5 would be 6. Well, so if f of 0.5 is 6, let's see, there's 0.5, it's 6. So far, so good. Now let's try f of minus 0.5. First of all, what is this? Which way do you go? Okay, you know it's going left because of that, right? Correct? Okay, so what's the first integer you run into when you go left? -1. Okay. Then we're going to multiply that by 4. So you get -4 plus 6. So this better be a +2, and it is. So D does appear to be our answer. We've checked 2 points. It works. Not only that, but A, B, and C all failed. So if we were really confident in our arithmetic, the moment A, B, and C failed, we would just go ahead and go with D. Yeah, because it can't be anything else. If A, B, and C aren't correct, then D has to be. I accidentally hit submit here. And then do next. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Again, we have a piecewise function. And what's the vertical line that separates the two domains? There is a vertical line at some point, or at some number rather, that separates these two domains. Start there. Start in the upper right. There's no solving here. The way you need to approach a piecewise function is by starting there and then looking at that. So what's the vertical line that separates the two domains? No, it's actually exactly 1. Okay? So if I were to draw a vertical line, that's what separates these two functions. Okay? We'll go from left to right. Everything over here has to be which function? Read it. Read it. No, read it. Which function? Y equals what? There's 2 different functions here. There's that function and there's that function. So we're talking, yeah, y equals minus x plus 1, not the 2x. Notice what that says. That says when x is less than 1. What does that mean? To the left or the right? Yeah. So it's this area over here where the function is going to be minus x plus 1. Okay. Let's just draw that. Where's that cross the y-axis? hold on. There's your b. Y equal mx plus b. Always reference that. Y equal mx plus b. B is where it crosses the y-axis. So it crosses right there. What's its slope? Correct. Correct. What is the slope? If the function is this, what's the slope of that? -1. Do not drop negative signs. If you see a negative sign, put it in there. Don't just forget about it. That's never going to be correct. Okay? All right, so the slope is -1. So if I were to draw a slope of -1, it would be like that. And then I would extend it because it's everywhere that's in this pink category. So that's what the top part looks like. Now, notice that in this area over here, which function applies? Which is the function that applies to that? No, you got the domain right. Whenever x is greater than or equal to 1, then what function are we going to use? Correct. Okay, so let's do this the hard way. Where would I start? If I'm trying to graph that function in green, where would I start? It's actually better to start with the y-intercept, always, the b. So what's b? Nope. Look over here. There's the format. Y equal mx plus b. Now look at your function. Y equal 2x minus 2. What's the b part? Okay, so that's b. So if I were to graph this function, normally I would start right there. You see where I'm drawing? Okay. Yep. And then apply the slope. What's the slope? Remember, it's only the coefficient. There's no negative sign. Notice. I mean, I can see why you said that because it looks like that's a negative, but that's an equal sign there. So the slope is positive 2. With me? Okay. So how do I get a slope? In other words, this is the way you graph all straight lines. You start with the y-intercept, and then you apply the slope. Well, our green dot is the y-intercept, -2. And what does the slope of 2 mean in terms of rise? How much do I go up and how much do I go over and which direction do I go? You can go, slope is what? Always remember the words for slope. It's rise over run. So the first movement is always up or down. And actually you can do it either way. You can go up or you can go down. Doesn't really matter. Let's go up. So we're going to go up 2. How much are we going to go over? Just 1. Yeah, in other words, a slope of 2 means you go up 2 and over 1. If you had a slope of 1, you'd go up 2 and over 2, because 2 over 2 would be equal to 1. But we're looking for the fraction to be 2. So if we're going to go up 2, then we're going to go over 1. So here I can go up 2, that dot, Now, which way am I going to go? To the right or the left? Because it matters. Which gives us a positive slope? Going. Okay. So there's right one. Okay. So if I were to draw this whole line, that's what it would look like, and that would be the answer. But notice that the blue area does not include this left part of the thing. I got to erase that. And I got to replace it with just that. Because it's only when x, be sure you differentiate between x and y. When x is greater than 1, this green function is in effect. When x is less than 1, the blue function is in effect. When x is exactly equal to 1, well, it turns out that that's the same point on either function, so it doesn't matter. So this is going to be our answer. Okay? And, well, I don't know what that means. So did I like time out or what? Yeah. Okay, that's okay. How do we get back into the quiz here? Begin retake. Okay, good. This is one of my goals to teach you to get quiz. Some time and explain the math to you. So you might want to, any nature that you're working with an online tutor, and I'm not just for you. I want to, and there is a big difference, because if I just want to take the quiz for you, I would just go through and take it. I got you. I got you. Wow, this looks familiar. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so, well, this is the least integer function. So which way do you go here, left or right? Okay. So what is the least integer function of 5.1? Which way do you go? You have to figure that out first. Okay, now what's the first integer you run into? You should be able to draw a number line in your head. It's not that hard. It goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the right, 0, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3 to the left. So I know, but this is an important one. This is really an important one. To be able to put a number line on paper from scratch without pulling it up, you need to be able to do that. Go to the right. Here's a number line. Always start your number line with 0. Okay? Now let's put 5 on there. And now let's put 5.1 on there. Now, starting at 5.1, which way do you go? Okay, what's the first integer you come across? Really? 4 is over here? 4 is between 0 and 5. So what's the first integer when you go to the right? 6, exactly. Okay, now let's put negative 2 on there. Negative 2.01. What's the first integer I come across when I go to the right? Nope, negative 2. Hold on, yes, negative reverses everything. So let's just draw the number line, because this is so important that you just have to be able to handle a number line. Okay. So there's negative 2, correct? There's negative 1. There's negative 3. You with me? So negative 2.1 is somewhere like that. Negative 2.1. So if you go to the right, what's the first integer you come across? There you go. So this is 6 plus negative 2 plus 4. Got it? Okay. So let me go ahead and erase my drawing screen, and we'll put in 4. What should I answer here? Are you sure you have completed this activity? I don't know what I should do here. I'm assuming you're seeing everything that I'm looking at. Trying to go to the next question. Okay, so just go next. And now should we say save and exit or not? Should we just go through this? Let's go through this one, because this should be pretty easy for you. Okay, so which way are we going to go? Right or left? Okay. What's the first integer that you run into when you go to the right? That's not an integer. Yes, that's what they're saying, is that you're dealing with the least integer of negative 6.105. So to find out what that's equal to, you just start at negative 6.105 on the number line and go to the right until you find the next integer. You got it. That's the way you do it. Well, this is a little difficult. It actually is the greatest integer function, mainly because it kind of reverses when you go from positive to negative. In other words, the greatest integer of 5.1 is 5, but the greatest integer of negative 5.1 is negative 6. And the best way to memorize it is, do you go left or right? And, oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you always want to be able to draw a number line. I mean, that is very, very basic in math, whether you're adding numbers, subtracting numbers, or whatever. You need to be able to draw a number line and label it. Start with 0, and then label +1, and then label -1, and then label +2 and -2. So you know where everything's headed. Yeah. Okay, let's see. We did this one to begin with, and if I'm not mistaken, it was D. It was D, yeah. So let's just go ahead and answer D. Go forth. This one we have not done yet. So we're looking, let me get all 4 functions in the picture. And then let me bring up my pen. So the way to handle these is to pick some number. Start with a positive number. That's fractional, a small number. Like 1, now that's smaller. Notice that we're multiplying it by 6. And our y scales only go up to 6. So if you pick 3, it would be 18, and we wouldn't know whether or not we were looking at it. So pick a number like, how about 1.1? So tell me what that is. What is the greatest integer function of 1.1? Okay, you're right. Now multiply that by 6. Okay, so let's start with A. So here I picked a 1.1, right? And I get 4. Correct? That's wrong. Now let's go to B. Is B any way it could be correct? Not a function. Now let's go to C. Here's 1.1. What is Y? B is beginning to look pretty good. Let's pick another number. How about 0.1? What's the greatest integer function? You're going left. All right. That fits for that. Now let's look at D. D, I can only see one of the points, which is at 2, and there's no way that's correct. So this, well, there's no way you could get 2. In other words, they're using a negative number, so they're using like negative 0.5. I'm going to go left, and that's negative 1, but then multiply 6 by negative 1, and you get negative 6. So there's no way I'm ending up with a 2. So it's not D. And C matches everything, so it's definitely C. Let's go ahead and put that in there. All right, we've seen this one before. It's definitely C. Let's just review real quickly. Remember, when you have piecewise functions, divide your graph up vertically. Where do I want to divide it up? At negative 6. At negative 6. There is x equal negative 6. And then we're going to have some function in that part of it, and we're going to have another function in that part. Okay? Well, to the left, we know for sure that this is a little bit confusing, but there's only one part of it. Remember, that's the function we came up with. So it's definitely C. First of all, that's not a function. And let me look at the other choices here. That's also not a function. D is not a function. Notice that it has to pass the vertical line test to be a function. No, it doesn't. So, right, if I dropped a vertical line through D, it would cross 2 different points. You can't have that. So the answer is either C or B. And we did this problem already, so let's not go through it again. Let's just answer C. Yeah, it was definitely C. Now, this one's a little different. Where am I going to draw my vertical line here? It's actually the equation of a line is either x equal 1 or y equal 1. What is it? It's x equal 1. No, vertical lines are x equal. Horizontal lines are y equal. So I've got a vertical line right there, so this could definitely be a possible answer. Got a vertical line, don't have a vertical line on B in any correct spot, so that's not right. I do have the correct vertical line on C. And then on D, I suppose I do have a vertical line going through there. Okay, so we have to test some points. Okay, so let's examine this top function right there. That's what it's going to be whenever we are to the left of the red line. Okay, now for that function, what's our y-intercept? Correct? That's the standard format for that equation. What you're looking for is b. It's 1, correct? That means that whenever we are to the left of 1 on the x-axis, we better be right there. A is not that. You can cross that out. C is not that. We can cross that out. Now let's go down and look at D. D, whenever x is at 0, it's a positive 1. Make sure you know here's positive 1. The top function is minus x plus 1. You always start at the b. Okay, it's just where you start. And then you apply the slope. You don't ever start with the slope and apply the point. Because you have to know where one point on the line is. And this tells us that whenever x is 0, then y better be 1, right? Here, let's just make sure you understand. The y-intercept means, by definition, that x is 0. Correct? So, if I take that function right there, and I make x equal 0, what is y? Yes, correct. So that tells me that C is not correct because y is negative 1. A is not correct because that's negative 1. It's all we have to do is find one of these things. Well, B and D could actually be correct because they both have a positive 1. And they both have a vertical line going through 1. So, what is the slope on the bottom part of the function? This is a piecewise function. There's 2 pieces to it. We got the left piece. Now let's look at the right piece. That's the y-intercept. Where's the slope? Okay. Of those 2 we've already ruled out the top 2. Of the 2 bottom ones, which has a positive slope when you're looking to the right of x equal 1? Yeah, exactly. As long as you recognize what positive and negative slopes are, that's all you need. Okay, greatest integer function. So which way are we going to go? Well, just which way, in other words, the difference between the least integer function and the greatest integer function is which way you go. Hold on, forget that. Let's look at this. That is greatest integer function. Which way do you go? That's what you have to answer first. Yeah, because there's a big L looking at you. Okay, so if I substitute some point in there, and again, let's make it a positive number and a small number. Minus 6, is that correct? No, it's plus 6, man. I'm glad I did that. Glad I looked. Okay, so we're going to test a number. Small, positive, non-integer number. What is that? What's the greatest integer function of 1.1? Okay. And now what is 5 times 1 plus 6? What is it? 5 times 1 is what? Okay. So whenever we are looking at 1.1 on the x scale, we better find 11 on the y scale. So let's examine A. 1.1 is beyond their scale. It doesn't go up that far, but it looks positive because that's where it would be, right? Okay. Same thing. No, B is ruled out. No, not really, because they don't go up as far either. So what we've done, first of all, that one I can rule out, right? It's not a function. So let's go back and change our number because they're not showing us anything to the right of 1.1. So let's change our number to 0.5. Let's see what we find out by 0.5. So what's the greatest integer function of 0.5? Which way do you go? Go to the left on the number scale, starting at 0.5. What's the first integer you come to? Draw the line and look at the line. Okay. So now, 5 times 0 plus 6 equals 6. So whenever we're at 0.5, we better be at 6. Well, if we look at A, there's 0.5, right, on the x-axis. We're at 6. That looks pretty good. What about B? We've already ruled this one out. What about B? At 0.5? Yeah, we're at 6. That's a possibility. How about C? When we're at 0.5, we don't know where we're going to be at because they don't have it drawn on. So, but I don't know. We need to check a negative number. In other words, let's check this number. Negative 0.5. What's the greatest integer function of negative 0.5? Go left from negative 0.5. No, what would it be? Negative 1. Remember, here's the number line. There's the number line. There's negative 1. There's negative 0.5. If I start there and go left, then I get negative 1. Okay, so that's negative 1. Now, if I apply my 5 times negative 1 plus 6, that's equal to positive 1. So, in other words, if I look at line C, or option C, and I go to negative 0.5 right there, it says 2. Not right. Yeah, and now let's examine the differences between A and B. Here, let me erase everything. All right, let's see. B is at 6, A is at 6, B is at 2, or A is at 2, B is at 1. Okay, so let's analyze again what this was, because that's going to settle it between A and B. What's the greatest integer function of negative 0.5? And what's 5 times negative 1 plus 6? What is that? Well, what is it? What's 5 times negative 1? No, it's times, not, it's negative 5. Yeah. The most important thing to do, hold on. The most important thing to do when you're doing arithmetic is to distinguish between multiplication and addition, or subtraction and division. Okay? This is multiplication. That is not 5 times, or that's not 5 minus 1. It's 5 times negative 1, which is negative 5. So what's negative 5? Yes, so what is negative 5 plus 6? No, positive 1. 6 is the bigger number. Yes, the 6 is the bigger number. So that is 1. So if we look, we need to be at 1, not 2. So what's the correct answer? Yes. All right. We've done an hour. This is probably a good place to stop, and we can pick up from here, and I can save and exit. And everything from here forward will be new stuff. And I'm quite certain that we've gotten all the previous stuff correct up until this point. So does that work? Okay. So I should save and exit. And click OK. Yeah, I want to leave. And then I'll let you pick up on this. Okay, so I think you got it, don't you? You got this greatest integer function under. Well, I tell you what. Let me test you a little bit before I let you go. Let me just do 2 or 3 minutes of testing. Okay, just to make sure you understand. Because once you do understand it, it really is rather straightforward. It took me a long time to understand it, trust me. And it's all about which direction you go on the number. So let's start with greatest integer function. Is that equal to? Is that equal to? What's this one equal to? Yes, correct. Yes, when it's exactly the same. Yeah, regardless whether it's least integer or greatest integer, if they actually do put an integer in there, then it's whatever that number is. Okay. Okay, now hold on. Let's do negative numbers. Still greatest integer function. In other words, it's the floorboards, not the caps. Go left, negative 3. So you can see that whether it's a positive number or a negative number matters. If it's a negative number, it's going to go left. If it's a positive number, it's just you're going to drop whatever the decimal thing is. What's that? Yeah, the positives, these here are pretty easy because they're really clear. You just drop the decimal. Okay, so what's the bottom right one? Okay, so you got the greatest integer function down. Now let me just give you a few with this one. Which way are you going to go? Okay. Perfect. Now I'll give you one negative one. Go to the right. Draw your number line out. Put all your numbers on it. There's -4. There's -3. There's -5. Where is this? It's right there, right? Which way do you go? Always go to the integer. They're called greatest integer and least integer for a reason. Your answer is always an integer. So you start, hold on, which way do you go? Does that look like an L? So what is it? Starting there, go to the right. What is the first integer you run into? Okay. So the easy way to remember it is when you're looking at that, you go left. When you're looking at that, you go right. Well, you have to always start there. You have to put that number on your number line. Label it. Draw the X. And then go either right or left, depending on whether you're looking at caps or bottoms. And this over here is a great starting place. The L, it means you go left. If it's not an L, you go right. As long as you can draw a number line, that's all you need to be able to do. Start with 0, put negative numbers on there, put positive numbers on there. If you can do that much of a number line, then that's all you need to do. And you should be able to do that from memory. You don't look at a book to figure out what a number line looks like. Okay? All right. Christina, your mom can take care of the payments through whichever she wants. I do need her to make payments before or immediately after the session. Yeah, and it's $28 for an hour. Okay. All right. We'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.